Minecraft Java Edition servers have a dilemma. While they have access to massive amounts of plugins and configuration options, we've all heard about how unoptimized Mojang's own code can be. While Bedrock Edition servers are faster, they're also missing those plugins and they introduce lots of bugs. Over time, Java Edition servers have strayed more and more from what Mojang provides. But what does it look like if we completely rewrite the Minecraft server software from scratch? This is Pumpkin, a new server written from scratch to improve performance. I interviewed Alex, the lead developer, to learn what sets Pumpkin apart and what it hopes to be in the future. And stick around to the end where we'll do some early performance comparisons against Paper and Vanilla. So, can you tell us a bit about yourself, and have you worked on any notable Minecraft projects in the past that we might know about?
So I'm Alex, and I started working on Pumpkin some weeks ago. So in the past, I did many things with like rendering, and I also worked on some Minecraft clients. Just like most of them are not big or something. It was more like to learn. And Pumpkin is actually my first project where I really made something with like much networking and like a real server. I already learned a lot.
Okay. Speaking of Pumpkin, where did the name come from?
Yeah, it has no real story behind it. I wanted something Minecrafty, something which Minecraft also had, and I thought like pumpkin is like an item you usually don't often use. It's something like more unique item, I think. And yeah, I just thought this name.
So, you mentioned that Pumpkin is a Rust-based Minecraft server. Has anyone else tried to do that in the past before you, or are you the first one? And if there are people in the past who've done this, have you learned any lessons from their attempts?
Yeah, so I'm currently now I know 3 different softwares. Like the reason why Pumpkin was started is because of Bamboo. Bamboo is like really unpopular project. It has like multi-version in it. It has a proxy built in it, and it is unmaintained, but it's really interesting. And yeah, then after Bamboo, I also discovered Feather, also very popular, but also unmaintained. And like Feather has also linked to Valence, currently the biggest. Yeah, but Valence is a framework, and I learned like many people don't like to use a framework. Like for example, it's really like Mindstorm. Mindstorm is really popular and maintained. And the most people don't really want to use the framework, they want to just use the vanilla and have like the vanilla experience, maybe with some plugins. They don't want to build everything themselves from ground up.
What significant development milestones have you passed so far, and what do you see in Pumpkin's future?
So I think the biggest milestone we have is the chunk loading. We can now fully load chunks from the vanilla worlds and like send them to all the clients, and all the players can see each other. And we also got Combit, I think yesterday. It was really finished. And for the future, we definitely want to have like own chunk generation. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you've leveraged multi-threading in ways that perhaps other servers don't. I realize that the vanilla Minecraft server is largely on a single thread, so perhaps this is an opportunity to integrate more threads to potentially speed things up.
Yeah, there is actually Folia from the Paper MC team, which like it's a fork of paper with multi-threading, because it's really not that easy to implement, because like it's not written for that from the ground up from the vanilla software. And we really want to focus on using multi-threading, and we already do it, and it's much faster than other softwares which don't use it.
Speaking of the Paper MC team, they also made Velocity and also Waterfall. And there are other tools that they didn't make, such as Via version, Geyser, and such. How compatible do you expect Pumpkin to be with those existing tools, or do you think it might break things?
So we want to support proxies, different proxies, for example, 1G code or velocity. I actually already started on working on velocity support, and it partially works, but not fully. So that's definitely a thing we want to support. What we don't want to support is our plugins from Bucket, because it will be very different. We will have an own API. So yeah, but we definitely want to support proxies.
I recall that one of the most notorious sources of lag in Minecraft seems to be entities, redstone, and world generation. Those three don't seem to be particularly implemented into Pumpkin right now. Do I have that correct? And how much do you think Pumpkin is going to improve these, and how?
So currently, yeah, it's right. Pumpkin don't has these features. I mean, we can spawn in entities, but we currently don't. And we also don't really have implemented any tick logic so far. But we really have much room for optimizations, because we write from the scratch, from the ground up. We don't rely on any vanilla software, which in the most cases is really unoptimized. And that's like often the reason why it's really hard for Paper or Spygate or any forks that rely on vanilla software to really make they have to rewrite so many things, and then it's still not guaranteed that it will be much faster. We have much freedom.
I realize that Pumpkin has not yet implemented a lot of features, so that means that it's hard to do a perfect comparison between Pumpkin and the Java alternatives. But for the features you have implemented, can you speak about how much faster Pumpkin is than the alternatives?
Yeah, so it's really not that fair in the current state, because we don't have all the features. But I already did some simple benchmarks and tried to make it as fair as possible, use the same build, use the same render distance, use the same player count. So yesterday I tested 300 dots on both players on the same specs and everything the same. And while Pumpkin was using 70 megabytes of RAM, Paper was using over 2 gigabytes actually, and was maxed out at the CPU, but Pumpkin was really kept low at the CPU, and we have really much room to optimize the code, because we don't rely on the GVM and can really do much optimizations for the CPU, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you can give anything about perhaps when we're talking about the tick cycle, there is different sections of it that have to be done, and each section sometimes costs some number of milliseconds. I'm wondering if perhaps there's some section of that cycle that you have totally implemented, and if so, can you indicate how much faster that section is in milliseconds versus, say, Paper or vanilla?
So you mean sections of ticks, for example, redstone entities and that stuff?
Yeah, I don't think you have those yet, but perhaps for just the chunk loading, have you perhaps done a drag race to see how fast you load a single chunk versus how fast vanilla or Pumpkin loads a single chunk?
Oh yeah, they actually do. I may send you a video I have done. So it's actually in release mode, the chunks are really instant. It's I have 32 render distance, it's really instant popped out. I think it was really some milliseconds it took. While on Paper I had to wait about I think 5 or 7 seconds until all the chunks are loaded in. So it's really significant difference actually. Mm-hmm. And it's really fast.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Spigot and Paper can directly patch Mojang's code into their builds, but Pumpkin is built from the ground up in Rust, so you have to write all your code yourself or have it contributed to your project. how do you see this affecting your release cycle if you reach that point, and what advantages or challenges does this bring?
So yeah, first we don't have to rely on unoptimized vanilla code like other folks have to. We have like I said, we have like much reading, and we release cycle would be very different. We don't want to go like with 120 or something like the Minecraft release cycle. We want to have like big releases every 1 or 2 years, I think, and there will be like big changes, also like breaking API changes, which for example currently Bucket don't have because they really want to keep the compatibility. And wait, you have mentioned something in the question. Can you maybe repeat the question again?
Yeah. So Spigot and Paper can directly patch Mojang's code into their builds, but Pumpkin is built from the ground up in Rust. So how do you see this affecting the release cycle, and do you see any advantages or challenges because of this reality?
Yeah, the challenges are that most people really like the vanilla logic, and they really know how vanilla works. For example, players who are good in combat, they really studied the vanilla logic and combat out. They exactly know what the vanilla knockback is, how combat works, how blocks are placed and stuff. And we decompiled the Minecraft server source, and there are some magic values we also take because we really want the Pumpkin like feel like vanilla, so players have like the same feeling. This is definitely a challenge because we have to recreate many things of vanilla.
Speaking of recreating things from vanilla, I realized that a lot of the behavior of Redstone and similar is not necessarily intentional, and some of it is just side effects of unoptimized or buggy code. And while you're trying to be as performant as possible, I know many people who use Redstone will prefer vanilla and prefer it be almost identical, if not identical, to vanilla. Do you see yourself trying to keep Redstone the same, or do you see yourself doing just what's faster?
So yeah, I actually heard a lot of complaints about that paper breaks Redstone, and it's true that it's often very different from the vanilla. So our approach on that is that you have a config. You have a big config, like maybe 2,000 lines of like config file, and there you can decide yourself. So at the vanilla, the default will be just vanilla. It will match vanilla. It will not be any different, and the redstone will function the same. And then, for example, if you want to have your server is maybe lagging or something, or you just want to have your server faster, you can change it your own. You can disable certain features, and we don't want to go gameplay or performance over gameplay, and let users decide their own.
Okay. I wonder, and this is maybe a dumb question, but when you are modifying that config, are you just recompiling the server, or are you just changing a setting which the server will implement? Because if it's a really, really large config, I wonder if there's a certain point where it's easier to program it and more understandable if it's simply compiling it in a different direction.
I mean, compiling it would be often simpler, I think, and I mean often you would have to implement certain things differently and have constantly like then checking if something has changed. But we definitely don't want to using like compiling it every time something is changed or the user wants to have a different setting. We want it that you change the file and basically just can reset the server, and then it will be changed. So yeah, much of the most software out there.
Okay. Another thing I was wondering is, um, going back to the question about the release cycle. Say Mojang releases a new update with some new features. Given the way that you develop Pumpkin, in the event that Pumpkin reaches release and becomes a maintained and active project into the future, how long do you expect the typical delay between an update releasing in the Java build and the feature reaching Pumpkin?
So yeah, we actually put a lot of effort in making things easy to port. For example, we currently use JSON files. For example, we have big item and blocks JSON files, which just generated from the vanilla Java jar actually. And we can just simply replace them and have like all the items and blocks ported. Then the only thing we actually need to implement are like the packets, and maybe if like some logic is added for maybe mobs or yes, like chunks or something. But yeah, I don't think it will be that long actually. I mean, it for sure it depends on how many features are added, but I think we can like expect like maybe 1 or 2 months
Okay.
delay.
Sure. I also wonder, in the past, Spigot used to publish builds for snapshots, but then they chose to go away from that. Do you have a similar mentality, or are you considering working off of snapshots?
We don't want to support snapshots so far. We want to focus on stable versions of the game.
Sure.
And yeah, that's currently the plan.
Okay. Your README says that you don't plan to become a replacement for bucket servers, but you do plan to support plugin development. What kind of servers do you expect to gravitate towards Pumpkin in the short term and the long term?
So yeah, first I think the simplest would be to go in the minigame server direction, because they don't so rely on vanilla logics and stuff. And we really want to push minigame servers, because yeah, they don't have like all this logic which vanilla have, and it would be much easier for them. But then in the long term, we would like to replace vanilla as well. So yeah, we also would like to go in the SMP direction, the survival direction, and yeah, just make an optimized version of vanilla and bucket. Yeah.
So Rust has some obvious advantages. It is closer to the metal, it's significantly faster than Java as just a language, but also you're taking the time to optimize things that were less optimized in vanilla. So Rust has lots of advantages, but the only disadvantage I see for Pumpkin right now would be that most Minecraft plugins are programmed in Java and they target the Spigot or Bucket APIs. How difficult do you think it will be to port existing plugins to work with Pumpkin? Do you expect those plugins to be reprogrammed in Rust, or would they be able to just continue using Java? And what is Pumpkin doing to make that porting process easier?
So we have a really interesting concept of plugins. I mean, we want to make this. So we want to support different programming languages. Actually, don't only Rust, because we want to use WebAssembly, which is actually the best options. We can support multiple platforms and multiple programming languages, and then developers can decide their own which languages they can use. It may be also be possible to use Java in the future. But currently, I'm not sure if they have WebAssembly backend. And we want to write guides or tutorials what developers from Bucket should, how they can approach Pumpkin, how they can port to Pumpkin and similar concepts which Pumpkin uses and all this stuff.
Have you spoken to the developers of any significant plugins, and have any voiced interest in supporting Pumpkin someday?
There are actually many people. I think it's really like the most asked question, like if I'm on Reddit or Discord, like many people want actually to have plugins. The interest is really big on having plugins, and they want to develop plugins. But currently we don't have them because we first want to build a foundation and then start with implementing plugins. But yeah, we don't reach out to specific people, but we already see much interest in there.
What is something that you're excited to work on soon?
Definitely the chunk generation. We want to implement it. I think we will have player inventories also soon, but it's not that a large feature. Chunk generation is really hard, and we will try our best to implement that.
How can the general Minecraft community support your project? And what about those of us who are competent or experienced in Java but have little to no experience in Rust? Are we able to help you also?
So yeah, it would be great if people just can test out the software, report bugs. Like we have a GitHub there you can create issues. You found a bug. Currently it's really in the developing state. There will be many bugs, but if you really like haven't released, please everyone just report the bugs. It's really like then important. We really want to fix them.
And are there any sites or channels or other information you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. I can. I will then just send you some like the GitHub or Discord. Yeah, like the usual stuff.
Okay. Massive thanks to Alex for that interview. Links to the GitHub and Discord servers will be in the description below. Now let's get to the performance analysis of Pumpkin against vanilla and paper. Pumpkin's potential comes from a few places. First, it uses Rust instead of Java. Since Rust is a compiled language, it runs in the native machine code of your processor, with less overhead than Java. Second, Spigot and Paper are made by patching Mojang's own code to add optimizations and enhancements, so inefficiencies in vanilla tend to carry over into Spigot and Paper. Pumpkin is free of those limitations because it's written from scratch, but there's also a downside. Like we said in the interview, Pumpkin is far from finished. It hasn't implemented everything that goes into a complete Minecraft server. There's no redstone, no mobs, no chunk generation. That means doing a fair comparison against the likes of Spigot or Paper is going to be tricky, but we can try. Pumpkin has already implemented chunk loading, so first I'm going to set up a world in a Paper server and use the Chunky plugin to load some chunks. Then we're going to take the same world and load it on both a vanilla server and a Pumpkin server. Then I'll fly around that world just to observe the chunk loading and how fast it goes. Since Pumpkin is still missing lots of features, we will need to try and disable those features on the other two servers before we do our test. That way they have a better chance to keep up. It still won't be a fair comparison, but it's better than nothing. Pumpkin does not currently light the world correctly, so just ignore that, but otherwise you can see it is much faster than the other two. If you're a Rust developer, I'd encourage you to take a look at the project and consider working on it yourself. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to revisit Pumpkin in a few months when there's more features implemented. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and joining my Discord, links in the description.